see. Oh yeah, good morning. Good morning. Hope you're enjoying Atlanta. Hopefully with so many carriers in one place, you're also enjoying making new connections. We really appreciate you coming out this morning. I think we have hopefully a few more people out in the hallway we're going to bring in, but this is our last morning, and I think it's going to be an interesting panel that will hopefully bring a lot of thought and discussion on new concepts for the wireless carriers. So I hope you had a chance to get a cup of coffee. We've got some food back there because we're going to hit the ground running here in just a minute, straight ahead into the panel. And I think you'll find it very informative. And following the coffee, following this, we'll have the coffee with the expert session. And this is sort of a new feature. You're going to be able to sit down at a table, talk to the experts, the thought leaders in that area, and we'll give you the rules on how we're going to set the tables up. But start looking at the topics and start thinking about the places that you want to light and talk about. But first, our panel this morning, we're very, very pleased to have such a august group of individuals. They're going to look at the evolution of mobile. And it's an outstanding panel, as I said, so we're leading the discussion for the moderator is Doug Grinspan. And Doug, we're just going to turn this over to him and let him introduce his panel. And Doug, let's put them together for Doug and his panel.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. So I'm probably going to sit down once the mics are live, but you rarely get to stand in front of an audience like this, so I'm going to take it in and bask it in for a minute. All right, we're good. My name is Doug Grinspan. I'm the head of revenue and associate publisher at Wired magazine. That's Wired Online, wired.com. Check it out. It's wonderful. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm one of a few people in the room who have been in mobile for more than 15 years. And I started here in Atlanta, graduated from Emory back in 2000. And my first entry into sort of startup wireless world was a company called AnyDevice right here in Tower Place. And what we were doing is building some of the first mobile websites in the world. The problem with mobile websites at the time is you needed a phone that could actually render a 1 or 2G experience. There were no phones in North America that could do that. So we literally went on an InfoSeek and Lycos forum to find 2 kids in South Korea who had a 2G phone. They would render the sites we were building for Time Inc. and NFL, some great brands that we couldn't really matriculate so well here. They would take their Sony Mavic camera with the 3.5-inch floppy disk, take pictures, send it to us. Those are 78 meg files, which took roughly 2 days to get to us. And then we go to NFL and say, hey, this is what you're going to have in 3 years. It was just a different time. And I just wanted to, before we introduce the crew, talk about how mobile conversations just in the last 2 years have changed. So I'm from New York, you can tell from the accent, if not the schnoz. And I think the best way to describe it is this, I'll act it out. I'm sitting on the subway, and I'm looking up at a billboard on the subway, on the 4 train. And it's a billboard, it's an advertisement for a bed bug app. And I'm looking at this, and this is a legitimate issue in New York. Nobody hug me later. And I'm looking at this, and it says, download me now with a QR code. And everybody knows, if you've been in Metro Manhattan, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no 2G, 3G, 4G, there's no voice service in the subway. So this is a stunt. This doesn't work. And so I think this is ridiculous. So I go to take my phone out to take a picture of it, and I notice everybody looking left to right, like standing way over from me, and they're like, this fucker's got bed bugs. Right? I mean, I'm sure that's what I would have thought. But the reality is, when you think about mobile, QR codes there doesn't make sense. Sides of buses doesn't make sense. Across the third rail doesn't make sense. But that was, again, 2, 3, 4 years ago when mobile was still about experimentation. We are so far past that. If you experiment with mobile and you get it wrong, you lose your customer. If you experiment with mobile and you get it wrong, you lose your business in some cases. If you're trying to build an app and you get it wrong, you don't launch it right on that kernel of Android, and you get it wrong, you've lost an opportunity to make hundreds of thousands of connections, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So this is roughly what we're going to talk about, this panoply and this discussion with this very esteemed crew. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, but we're going to start with Chris Huff from the weather companies first.
Good morning. So Chris Huff, Weather Channel, Weather Company. I run engineering for mobile and consumer apps. I've been at Weather Channel for about 4 years. So you asked me, what am I excited about? What are we working on? Even within our own company, we've evolved, right? So mobile at first was all about scaling it. And so for us, we've definitely scaled our business. We've focused on speed and quality as we scale it. But just as an example, so last month in February, we did 280 billion weather requests. So to put that in perspective, Google in February had 98 billion search requests. So our business has scaled, but we've got to move beyond that. And so one of the things I'm excited about is what we're doing in the area of science and safety. So we've got several technologies that we're rolling out. It's exciting to talk about how mobile and connected devices have impacted that in a material way, and happy to talk about that more later. But all of that is kind of coming together to create experiences that will not only create a better experience for our customers, but hopefully make their lives safer as well. So excited about that.
Very good. Excellent. Matt?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Jones. I'm General Manager of Mobile for the Home Depot. Home Depot is based here in Atlanta. Don't need a lot of introduction about the company, but we're the largest home improvement retailer in the world. We have 2,200 stores and did about $84 billion in sales last year. I have an interesting role at Home Depot. I work on the .com team as part of our online product offerings. And it's an area that's getting very explosive growth for the Home Depot. We're super excited about a strategy that we call interconnected retail, which is really the idea of taking our physical brick and mortar locations, our stores that are located across North America, and marrying them up with what you can bring to the table from an online or from a mobile point of view. So I'll talk about this a little bit more as we kind of get into the panel, but my role is really sort of at the tip of the spear of that interconnected retail type of shopping experience for customers. If you think about the role that mobile can play when you're down in the aisle of the store, or perhaps even before you went to the store, or post-purchase, there's a lot of interesting things that we're doing to enable technologies that will make the shopping experience more seamless, more quick, more easy, inside and outside our stores. So I'm happy to be here today and looking forward to the panel.
Very good. Thanks, Matt. Tom?
All right. Tom Newdome. I'm with SouthernLINC. SouthernLINC provides wireless service to the southeast part of the United States, Alabama, Georgia, southeastern Mississippi, and the panhandle of Florida. Covers about 127,000 square miles. SouthernLINC is a subsidiary of the Southern Company. Southern Company provides electric utility service to the southeast United States also, has about 4.4 million electric utility customers, 45 megawatts of generation capacity, so it's a very large utility. And so when I think about, and I'm the engineering director, I've been with SouthernLINC about 2.5 years now. My background is a little different. It's in the electric side of the business. I was there for a long time. I won't tell you how long. But when I think of the evolution of mobile, I have to go back in the electric system, and that's my perspective, and see how we've operated. Of course, we started in wired manners and have evolved to wireless mobile. But some of the things utilities were trying to do in this regards goes back to the 1920s when we had a substation, a large substation. You'd have manpower there at the substation. And when they figured they could wire a communications to it and monitor the voltage, then we could eliminate the manpower at that substation. So from a utility standpoint, a lot of the evolution has been to either reduce cost or provide reliability, and reliability has been very high goals in the past several years, just like a lot of things. Just like coverage for a mobile system. There's high expectations of keeping the power and electricity on today. So the first types of communication were power line carriers, so they actually communicated voice and data over the lines, and that evolved eventually to telephone technology, which became very widespread. That eventually went to, so some of the control systems went to analog microwave, and then eventually went to 900 megahertz point-to-multipoint radio systems. From the utility standpoint, it's all about applications, or a lot of its applications. For instance, back in the 90s, we really exploded with real-time systems and monitoring the system and controlling it. It used to be back then that the only way we knew that a customer was out of power was if he called. Today it's different. We've got advanced metering infrastructure, so when that power goes off at his house, we know it's off. And that's due to the wireless communications. But it's even more than that. We just don't want to know he's out. We've actually got that system talking to our outage management system that's telling the operator, everybody that's out, at a single glance so he can manage the system more effectively. And all that's due to the communications. Another big step for us was dispatch. Dispatch used to be all radio. If you think about it, if you're out there in a truck waiting your turn to talk on the radio while everybody is and you're trying to get something done, it's very inefficiently. So we went to almost a voiceless dispatch where the operator or the field forces had a computer in their truck and they would actually dispatch the application or the service order to him and he could complete it. It was transactional, so it's very simple from that standpoint, but now it's growing. We want to send more information out there. We want to send a map of the system. We want to send the status of the system, more communication, so it's growing. As we look at the grid system, everybody's heard the term smart grid. From a utility standpoint, smart grid is not necessarily new. It's just another step in the evolution of communications and control of the system. We have, if you look at an electric distribution system, you got thousands and thousands of switches out there. And now we can actually, with remote monitoring, we can know the status of the switch, we can control the switch. We actually have switches talking to switches so that we can keep the customer's lights on. Like I said, it's a very high expectation, just like you see from coverage or any of the services that are provided from a wireless standpoint. So we're very excited that we started building out an LTE system. We started construction. 1st of January, it's going to be the first part of it will be done by 2018, and we got some more objectives after that. We're trying to convince the sales folks that LTE stands for Love the Engineers. I don't know if we've done that yet, but if I can tell though, if we don't stay on budget and I don't stay on time, it's going to probably, for me, it's going to be LTE is going to be less than employed probably.
Very good, Rajin.
So good morning. I'm Rajin Persaud from CNN. I lead our next generation products and strategy unit on the product side. Doug tried to disinvite me this morning when he found out I carry a BlackBerry. So apparently I shouldn't.
This is being
that.
recorded, by the way. Got to be careful.
Okay. So next generation products, really, the last couple of years I've been focused on building over-the-top products, set-top box products. But as you guys all know, and based on your daily lives, mobile is the way everyone is consuming content today. So that's our focus for the next couple of years.
There were some really interesting stats that were thrown out, right? So I just want to make sure this right. 280 billion weather requests, right? Obviously, over 90 billion from a search request standpoint from Google, right? 2,200 stores, right? $84 billion in revenue, 4.4 billion utility customers, right? And everybody that you are touching in terms of who you're communicating with. I mean, what we're talking about here is, I think, elements of what's called the Gaia theory. And what the Gaia theory is, without getting too theoretical, is this concept of how neurotransmission is extending to everything we do. And so think back to bio classes or biochemistry classes. We have these neurons in our head, axons and dendrites and neurotransmission, but it's cellular in nature. And what I mean by that is this neuron don't touch, right? So there's something goes on, you're feeling an emotion, you're feeling stressed. You had a great Waffle House experience last night at 4 in the morning. George, I know it's you. And ultimately, something's happening there, and a neurotransmission takes place, and you're feeling something, and this is happening real time in nanoseconds. But we're talking about hundreds of billions and hundreds of trillions of connections going on in our own body, right? That's how we do all the things we do, and I choose to do this to make you feel as though this is a sweeping statement, right? But this is what's going on here. We're making a smarter planet. And not to make this an IBM commercial or a GE commercial, but that's really what we're doing. It's a smarter planet. All the connections that the individuals on this panel are responsible for make us smarter as an organization, as an organism. I think it's really interesting to think about that. So we have two individuals here focused on infrastructure, right? Infrastructure as network and infrastructure as retail when you think about Home Depot. We have two individuals here who are focused on information, right, as utility versus entertainment. Not that CNN is entertainment, but it is an opportunity to escape from what an individual is doing now to be informed on what's going on, right? That's what ultimately Turner's doing or TNT's doing or other networks, right? And so when we think about that, it's all about connectivity. It's all about mobile making us smarter. Where do we lean into? Not just as business individuals, businessmen in this case, but as consumers. So one thing we talked about, many of us have kids, when there's those whining moments, you just pass an iPad and so the tears go away. But when you pull it back, the tears start coming back twice as hard, right? So what we're actually implementing in our lives is a double-edged sword. It's a scourge and it's also an opportunity. So along those lines, I'd love to talk about Home Depot specifically for a second. Connected home and competitively what Lowe's is doing with Iris, what Google is doing with Nest, and I know that's part of the portfolio. How do you make the network like a SouthernLINC and the information that's coming in, how do you make a smarter home? And what are consumers asking you to get them?
Well, I think, you know, the way we think about connected home and even by extension sort of Internet of Things is, you know, what is the natural role for a company like Home Depot to play in that space? You know, people largely know us as, you know, a trusted retailer that you can go to 7 days a week and find, you know, 35 or 40,000 different products in one of our stores. You know, that's largely sort of the dimension that we occupy for, you know, the majority of our consumers. You know, as I talked about a little bit earlier, you know, where this business is extending for us is the opportunity to build out, you know, in online. Online was really a hobby for us probably up until about 5 years ago or so. Now we're the 9th largest e-commerce site in the United States, right, you know, with multiple billions of dollars of revenue. So obviously there's an opportunity for us to expand our footprint, to bring, you know, let's say 1 million SKUs onto our website compared to the typical store that's got 35,000. So the internet, you know, is playing, and by extension, of course, mobile, you know, a really, really key part in terms of building, you know, sort of the next generation of Home Depot strategy. With regard to Internet of Things, I'd say, you know, and to connected home, we're still figuring out what the right place is for us to play in that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Do we want to be a device manufacturer? Do we want to be a partner with, you know, our vendors, call it Samsung or, you know, Nest or someone like that? I think we're still spending some time trying to really, you know, concretely determine what is the best role for Home Depot to play in terms of, you know, that, you know, that ecosystem.
Switching to Chris for a second, it's often a misnomer that the Weather Channel is sort of just about weather, right? But it's actually a subsidiary of the Weather Company. I'd love for you to sort of shed some light on what the larger umbrella is doing. You talked about it a little bit earlier, and how you are using weather as a conduit to inform several industries.
Yeah, so for us, we have our B2B business that you alluded to. So we have Weather Systems International and Weather Central that are engaged in selling weather. They resell weather. They bring in radar data and they package it up and resell it. We actually power 90% of all of the local TV station applications. So we white label those and sell those under the local brands. So the 11 Alive app, for example, is powered from WSI. And so that technology also sells information into airlines. So there's a major airline carrier who uses our data to real-time forecast and predict kind of wind shear conditions. And this has saved them millions of dollars over a year in just damage to the plane. Not catastrophic, but just wear and tear and maintenance. And then on the consumer side of the business, we also own Weather Underground. And we acquired Weather Underground maybe 2 years ago, and one of the things that was most attractive about them was that they had a huge network of personal weather stations. They had about 30 to 40,000 personal weather stations. It doesn't sound like a huge number, but these weather stations are $1,000 minimum. So customers buy this unit, $1,000. They put it up at their house or at some location, and give us the data every 2 seconds. The data goes into our database, and we help inform them with their forecast, but also give them a tool to be able to visualize that themselves. What that has done to our own forecasting has been remarkable. So we've taken those, and about a year ago, we put that data into our database. Our temperature reporting accuracy went up 25%. So you talk about, you know, connected devices and how is it providing safety and how is it improving our science. We also did a deal recently with Netimo. Netimo makes a smaller version of a personal weather station, but that's taken us up to almost 100,000 personal weather stations, and that's helping to enrich our forecast ability. We're starting to collect the data off smartphones, right? So a lot of Android devices and iPhone 6 and above reports barometric pressure. So we're going to start using that to see if we can improve conditions. If we can be that much faster in notifying somebody of a storm, a tornado, or something going on in their environment, we believe the connected environment of sensors and the things around us can help augment that.
I think that's an interesting point. So the speed and accuracy, the timeliness of notification or sharing news. So maybe this is a good point to go to Rajin. Yeah. So obviously CNN and Turner at Large has multiple points of entry, set-top box, over-the-air, mobile apps, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, where are you seeing, if maybe even surprising growth in all the respective channels that individuals are gathering data from CNN at Large?
So I think the biggest area of growth that we're seeing obviously is mobile. For years, the CNN.com has been the staple for our business, at least for the digital business. But what we're trying to figure out now is if you look at, especially with the younger generation, companies like BuzzFeed or HuffPo are starting to, they really own mobile. And for us, as we're trying to sort of age down in our demographic, we're really trying to figure out how do we start providing a more robust set of information and the right types of information to the younger consumers, because that's where they gravitate to initially.
Got it. Very good. Switching to you, Tom, for a second, from an infrastructure standpoint, obviously SouthernLINC is part of Southern Company utility, and if you think about telecom, it's really a utility. I think that's a fair way to put it. How, from a reliability standpoint and access standpoint, you have hundreds of thousands of customers that may have an issue because God forbid there's a tornado, or God forbid there's a hurricane and things come down. How do you deal with disaster relief? How do you deal with making sure that infrastructure is there and ever present as often as possible? Because we all know consumers are impatient. We are all consumers. We're impatient. And when something isn't there right away, they can flee in numbers. I mean, how do you address that?
Well, certainly in day-to-day operations is so important. I talked about reliability and cost of service and that type of thing, but when you have a natural disaster, especially a widespread disaster, it all becomes about trying to get that response in, and a lot of things involved. And what you said about customer expectations is pretty good too, because I've noticed if you have a large disaster, it's going to take you a week or more. When you first go in, everybody's very glad to see you. Then after about 2 or 3 days, there's a little impatience there, and they expect things to move faster.
That sounds like some of my second dates.
There you go. There you go. But so.
Wait, I thought you were married, you said.
Yeah, I'm just earlier.
Oh, okay.
So you have the aspects of Katrina when it hit Mississippi. We had 12,000 outside forces come into that area in a very large concentration. So how do you handle that? So you start with the infrastructure, of course, and what we do is we probably go to extra lengths on our end to make sure that our sites are built better from a structural standpoint. Especially backup power. We have backup power just near all our sites. And as we build out LTE, we'll keep that in mind too. Along with backhaul, we're trying to look at different ways, because backhaul is so important, right? To have a redundant backhaul through the MPLS system that we're putting in. And it's all, for the operation utility data, but certainly for response when you try to bring a large workforce in. And we have a lot to learn still about LTE and the operation of that from a data standpoint, how that'll play. The voice side is always going to be important to us too, and we'll keep that operating. But when you have disaster, it's a different game, and there's no question about it. And you still have to have that infrastructure investment to be able to handle those, and it's always a cost-benefit question when you do that. But we found that we need to make that investment, and we try to do that.
Yeah, and I'd put in a plug for Home Depot here, because we can't do what we do in those times of need without having access to that infrastructure. One of the things that our company has gotten very good at over the last 30 years, let's say, is what's our role to play in natural disaster type of situations, whether it's flooding with Hurricane Sandy or something related to Katrina. We mobilize massive units inside Home Depot to provide needed products to disaster recovery zones, and you can't do any of that without access to fundamental sort of telecommunication services. So we can't do what we do in those times without having access to what you all in the room are providing to us. So I don't want to lose sight of that, because I think it's something that sometimes a customer or a corporation can kind of take for granted. And there's a lot of work that happens, further upstream that isn't seen by, the end user or customer.
I think that's spot on. I mean, if you think about sort of the evolving hierarchy of need, even 10 years ago, it's food, water, shelter, right? And now it's food, water, shelter, solid 4G service.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and the same thing goes for
Actually,
these
yeah,
guys, CNN and weather.
Actually, sometimes, they say people will walk out of the house without their keys and their wallets, but you never forget your cell phone.
No.
So the 4G cell service comes first. Food and water comes second and third.
I mean, because and so I will attest to that, by the way. I spent some time at Home Depot, and they do take it seriously. It's funny because I went over to Weather Channel, and we batten down the hatches when a hurricane comes down. They're like, hey, this is your first hurricane, better get ready. And I was like, actually, we did this at Home Depot. They would have a whole war room dedicated to reacting to and planning for a hurricane. But absolutely, and it changes, right? As the hurricane gets forecast and before it comes land, everybody's on TV and they're watching what's going to happen. They're on their website, they're on their desktop computers, kind of planning. And then as it hits land, power goes out and everything shifts to mobile, and you can see it in our data. And so we have to continue to have a kind of a seamless storytelling from there. So from alerts as a top priority, but to move into kind of telling the story of what's going to happen, we got to have Jim Cantori on our mobile device streaming live. So we do those kind of things, but a good bit of that relies on the infrastructure and relies on us planning to be able to serve our data and serve our content, and to be able to do so and scale that up. Because when you get into those situations, everybody's on cell, it kind of feels like a 2G connection. So you've got to be able to scale and tailor your data feeds so that they can withstand kind of low connection speeds.
Yeah, Rajin,
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, just real quick, for us, it's the same. We've got a feature called iReport on our mobile apps.
Yeah.
And a lot of times in disaster situations, the first pictures or the first videos we'll get back are from those customers who have their mobile phones, especially with national type disasters when the land-based communications go out. So definitely.
Yeah. Tom, there's something
Yeah,
else?
that's a big difference. I kind of flashed me back to probably 1970, maybe 70 plus. Hurricane Frederick hit Theodore down the Gulf Coast, and my parents were in Mobile at that time. And I remember when that thing hit, I did not know whether they were okay or not. You would think even in the 1970s you could figure that out pretty quick. But the only way I knew they were okay was when about 2 days later I drove down there and checked on them to make sure they were okay. Completely different situation now. Even from a utility standpoint, the role of communications in restoring power is so important, but when you get the power back on, people's lives start to go back to normal, So the faster we can do that, the better things are.
Well, that's really interesting. So you think about all the interesting, just the panoply of things that you can do on your phone at any given time, but when disaster strikes, it's always about lowest common denominator. And God forbid you use your phone for voice, right? So for you guys, when you think about the business you're in, what is lowest common denominator? Where do you minimally have to be? Is it an app? Is it a mobile optimized site for customer service? Or is it text messaging? Is it instant messaging? God forbid, is it Snapchat? I mean, what is it voice? I mean, what has to minimally be there? What do you have to get right? And then you add upon. Maybe we just sort of go down the road.
Yeah, sure. So for the Weather Channel, we've got to be able to get our weather data. People need to know what's going on. So we try to present that in a way that can scale down based on the need. Actually spent a good bit of money to buy a Faraday cage, if for those of you who know what that is, to actually be able to simulate 2G connections. Because a lot of times people see 3G or they see 4G, but if everybody's on a cell connection, you don't have that, right? So nominally it's more like a 2G connection. And so we need to be able to get our data through. People need to be able to look at the radar map and see what's coming towards them. Our alerts have to be able to make it there. So that's definitely a priority and something that we do. And so, us not being just an entertainment, we want to be able to tell stories, but we have to balance that and make sure that we prioritize the weather data.
Got it. For Matt.
So the way we think about mobile at Home Depot is probably pretty similar. I manage 3 or 4 different sort of distinct product offerings. Our mobile website, which has the lion's share of our audience, our iPhone app, our Android app, and we do have a text message program as well we're sort of incubating and playing around with a little bit. But at the end of the day, the way I think about it is, if somebody pulls out a phone and they go into an app store, they need to be able to find Home Depot. Somebody pulls out a phone, goes to Google, they need to be able to, to be able to land on something that, that my team is managing. Customers, for us, vote in different ways, and we have different relationships with different types of customers. You think about contractors and pros, a really important customer segment for us. We have an app that, really is tailored towards their needs. Somebody who's more of an episodic shopper or, sort of a weekend do-it-yourselfer, they may have our app because they're in our stores, once or twice a week or a couple times a month. Somebody who is embarking on a project and hasn't been in our stores for, 4 or 5 months, they may start out, on mobile web. They may want to know, hey, what time does the store close this weekend? And that may end up being a Google search for what time does, Atlanta Home Depot close. Right. So we think about the variety of different ways that people can kind of come through our front door, and we want to make sure that we've got, the most optimized experience that we possibly can deliver, across that sort of, across that landscape.
So I have a question for you. So as my wife calls me, a Home Depot junkie, because I'll go there for 4 hours on a Saturday morning. Do you guys plan to do mobile checkout, either for the staff or for customers? Yeah, so we have an enterprise mobility program inside the company, and a very successful device that we call the First Phone that we have enabled. We probably got 30 or 40,000 of them across the company. Just rolled out actually a newly updated device that's got a full browser on it. It's got our consumer Android app on it. So for the first time now, our associates actually have access to the same app that I've delivered to out to the customer base. One of the things that we are looking at and probably looking to put out into the market, within the next 6 to 12 months will be some type of checkout in aisle off of that device. We're watching closely, obviously, everything that's happening in the payment space. I think we have looked very closely at Apple Pay. We've been involved with a lot of things with PayPal that have been very successful for us. And that's one of the areas that you think about, again, kind of trying to reduce friction. Things are moving very fast in that space, and it's starting to get very real, even for a company, of our size. Sure. Lot of innovation happening in the payments and checkout space.
It's going back to Tom. So lowest common denominator, what minimally, from a SouthernLINC standpoint, has to be operational into sort of the 5 nines range?
Taking one step back, I will say that I know in my experience over the past 15 years, the weather projections that are done today are just so much farther ahead. And I know a lot of that's because of increased technology. Sure, there's a lot of things, but it starts with preparation, right? Mm-hmm. So the better predictions you have and things the past 5, 10 years are just so much better than they used to be. It's amazing, and as that advances. So you get ready. But for us, it's getting your field forces out, getting them active, and we've got a push-to-talk application that's like a dispatch system, but it's more of a tactical radio voice application, and you can't just make cell phone calls to crews out in the field, and they can't talk by cell phones. They've got to have something that's faster, which is a push-to-talk system. So for us, it's making sure that thing's operational, that everybody can talk together, and making sure we got the system coverage for that.
Got it. Very good. And then Rajin, so again, from an LCD standpoint, when you're talking to your outside of television from a mobile perspective, what minimally needs to be operational?
Yeah, so for us, it's not so much mobile, but it's the satellite-based systems, right? So a lot of our crews that go into the field, they actually use the mobile satellite-based systems that you can carry around in a suitcase.
All right, so the most pressing question I know you guys all wanted me to ask, Apple Watch, you guys going to get one?
Absolutely.
Yes?
They're already on order.
Yeah. Already on
Actually, CNN has an Apple.
Yeah.
We have an Apple will actually be part of the launch.
Very cool.
We have a CNN app on the Apple iWatch.
All right, very good. Competitively speaking, who in your respective sort of arenas, and there's some overlap here, who do you watch out for? Who do you respect? Who intimidates you? Who makes you think, oh, I wish we had done that first? Is there, and obviously that's very varied, and from an infrastructure standpoint, from a retail standpoint, but is there anyone you look to, and you set up a Google alert, I want to know what these guys are doing? Whoever wants to start.
I think for CNN, it's the companies that are really encroaching very quickly on us are these really small 2-3 man shop that we've all heard of, that either Facebook or Google or Apple will up and buy for $1 billion, right? So producing content has become so cheap today. So you or I, with a few $1,000s, can start up a content production outfit, and it costs us almost nothing to create a mobile app, right? Or anyone to create a mobile app and start pushing content out there. And news has become such a commodity these days, and so with Twitter and Facebook and these types of aggregators, So the people that we watch out for are the small, scrappy outfits who can aggregate content and push it to you on your mobile device very quickly. And so what we're left with is to try to figure out how to create valuable content and then still continue to make CNN a destination for you.
Are you guys doing anything to help push journalism? I feel like in the mobile world, journalism has kind of taken a step back, right? Like if anybody writes an article, it's on par with the Wall Street Journal or CNN or anyone else.
Yeah. I think it's a really, really good question, and sadly, I think journalism doesn't become important until you get to a certain age where you actually start caring about what's happening in the world. Because folks, and if you look at why we have such strong competition, again, just using something like HuffPo or BuzzFeed, it's sort of the entertainment type light news that the majority of the consumers are interested in. Nobody wants to deal, especially here in the U.S., right? Nobody wants to deal with the serious issues, read the health topics or the political, articles that you might write, and so.
Right. Well, there's the attention deficit, right? So even 15 years ago, there were really 20 to 30 channels anyone would look at on television, right? 8 years ago, there were maybe 100 apps you'd ever really consider getting. Now you have over 7 million. You have 1,000 channels, terrestrial or otherwise. And so fighting for every minute is tough, and sometimes a listicle is the best way to go. It just gets you in, gets you out. It's a little bit funny, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, gets you most of what the headline is, and then you scan and move off. So, I mean, certainly at Wired and some of the things we're doing at Condé Nast, those are true competitive concerns.
Yes.
From a mobile standpoint in monetization, how do you actually tell your story from an advertising standpoint? So it could be as simple as using mobile banner ads through some of your agencies. But what is working? What seems to work? I mean, for someone or attacking a consumer that is not exploiting what your brands offer, how are you looking to advertise or get that awareness out via mobile? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah. So we're a big publisher, so we allow companies to advertise on our platform. So we actually spend a good bit of our engineering capital on that. We try to make it engaging ads. We try to do things that are unique. We started maybe 2 years ago a branded background. So it's a background on our homepage that looks weather. So if it's raining out, it'll be a beautiful kind of outdoor environment that has rain in it. But then nicely placed at the bottom is an ad. So something that doesn't just feel like a banner ad, something that people could connect with a little more. So we actually spend a good bit of time trying to do that, trying to find out what people are interested in and bringing them the right targeted set of ads.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think the studies and also the data shows that most mobile display ads are ineffective, and when you try to scale them down really small, it's really hard to see them. What we've gravitated towards is creating native content, or so native ads. So for example, we can partner with Lexus, if you will, and we can create something that might be interested to someone who is a car buff, right? And it takes the form of content rather than just using display ad unit. The one thing that's also interesting for us is moving towards the direction of location-based ads. And so I've sat through a number of usability studies that we've done on our own products, and consumers repeatedly say, if the ad was just relevant, or if I could choose my own ad, I don't mind watching it, right? And so for us, for example, our mobile app, if we can get to the point of where if I'm in downtown Atlanta and I'm looking at the CNN app, then I should be able to see ads that are relevant to me, and I think you will start to see a better uptake, right, and better.
Very good. Right. Anyone else want to touch that one?
I mean, I could speak from the perspective or point of view of a brand, and I think we run a fair amount of advertising, with both of these guys.
Thank you for your business.
Yes, I appreciated that. One of the big challenges that we have again is, we're not typically seen as, this super innovative, digital forward-thinking type of company. We occupy a different space in a lot of our, customers' minds. So this idea of using mobile advertising to create awareness for something that the Home Depot app can do is really interesting to us, and we've got to continue.
So if, for example, I may start, my phone says 4G, but I've only got 2 bars, or I got 1 bar, and most of the times you have this expensive phone that has the capability in the radio, but really the bandwidth is not there, and you end up viewing a pretty crappy version of what we actually spend a good bit of money to create. So one thing that will probably never become a reality here, maybe in the States, is, like mesh-based, networking, right, where we can have sort of shared bandwidth.
Open system, some regards, which is a good thing for us. But then I guess as we look forward, we kind of recognize that there will be areas we'll need, we're kind of wondering how small cells will play into what we're trying to do from an area standpoint, from a technology standpoint. We suspect there's a role there. We're not sure exactly what in detail, so we'll be looking at those things as we go forward.
Very good. Matt, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, look, it's fundamental. I mean, you can't do any of this stuff without having good coverage and good speed. For us, that does become challenging sometimes. Our stores are, kind of concrete canyons, 100,000 square feet, products stacked up, left and right. It's tough to get a signal sometimes in some of our stores. We've had, Wi-Fi in our stores for 4 or 5 years. I still see customers that are complaining about, coverage and speed there. Hey, why is the Home Depot app sputtering? Well, your connection isn't very good. It's not the code that is underlying the app, but the connection isn't very good. I mean,
it's your fault.
Yeah, exactly. I end up getting a 1-star review in the App Store because of because of something like that. So I mean, I'd like to be optimistic about what the next 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years sort of looks like as it plays out, but. You can't really do any of this stuff without having really reliable coverage, broad coverage, and fast speeds. It's the underpinning of all of this, this technology and this user experience and this product development, that's being built on top of it.
Perfect. I think, do you want to go?
Well, I was just, and so how we live our lives has changed so much that we use so much of it as consumers. So I was in Barcelona, and there's 40,000 people in Barcelona.
At the Mobile World Congress?
At the Mobile World Congress, and it's just tapped out the network. So you're even in your hotel on Wi-Fi, or if you're in the conference site itself, and you're trying to do something. If something critical comes up, you're barely on a connection, and it's just, you feel your quality of life go like this, and then you look next to you and someone's just screaming down Facebook and they've got videos playing, and you're just like, you want to tell them, stop that so I can send this critical email.
My text matters.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, I think the expectation of just how we exchange information. Facebook just came out with their Messenger app. We partnered with them on that. But it's all about sending images from apps and being able to talk app to app using their infrastructure. But that's all more data. And so it's competing with the things that are urgent as well as the things that are just kind of nice to have.
Very good. So this has been a lively discussion. We have 2 minutes and 46 seconds for questions. I had actually requested for chairs on swivels so they could all have their back to you, and based on the question, boy style, they could decide to turn over and answer it. But Lucy screwed up, so it is what it is. I think we'll start with one question. We'll see where it goes, and these guys will be available for a couple questions afterwards. And we want to kick it off. Yes, sir.
Hi, I know it may not be fair for me to ask a question, but welcome, thank you. I thought it was a great panel. I would like to bring back, you all talked about coverage, you talked about all the apps, and bring it back to partnerships with the carriers that actually have the coverage in the area that you may be seeking service. Where does especially the small rural carriers that there may be only one carrier that has coverage in one of your store areas because that's the only carrier providing service. What type of relationships, especially with connected homes and some of these hyper-local content, that's where our carriers can excel. How do they interface with you? Do you look to them to say, hold it, I can improve my coverage, I can improve my access to my customers if I have a better relationship with the carrier that actually provides that coverage? Do you look at that, and if you do or if you don't, how does a wireless carrier interface with you? Because they want to make a better customer experience for their clients also.
Good question.
So I'll take a swag at that. We don't directly work with any wireless operators. We do work a little bit with the Googles and the Apples and folks like that. I view my role is to build some sort of product or service that's going to generate customer demand. Not necessarily, sales and e-commerce and things like that, but if there's a product that you can utilize to make shopping at Home Depot easier, but requires, connectivity and requires, coverage and things like that, I want to be able to create the best product I can for our customers. If our customers can't access that product because of, a gap in coverage or something like that, that seems like, a different problem for someone else to solve. But I got to create that demand that sort of is the spark that lets that conversation happen sort of, in another place.
And we've worked with carriers to just, at our scales, we started streaming video. One of the carriers came to us and said, hey, we could probably do this smarter and it would save us some bandwidth. And so we actually partnered with them to make some of that a little more efficient.
Yeah. Others?
Nothing. We haven't done anything.
Maybe one more question? Not caffeinated yet. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Hopefully this was beneficial for you guys. We'll be here for a couple minutes to answer any questions more intimately if appropriate. And thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the question. I hope I didn't whiff it.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Very good. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to the panel. Appreciate it. It is fascinating to hear how our lives change, how we do business, and how we communicate with customers. I think many of our carriers are going to have to address some of these issues and be more cognizant of some of the services that they can partner with, especially with some of the concepts that drive the businesses that we heard about this morning. So, okay, now we're going to get right to what we said is a new format. Hopefully you'll find it interesting, the Coffee with the Experts format, and it's your chance to speak directly with the true experts in the field. And I'm going to briefly introduce our topics and the experts, and then you can decide which table you'd like to go sit at first. And we're going to work this a little like speed dating. You're going to do a half an hour at the table of your choice, and then we'll ring a bell or I'll say time. And if you're enjoying the conversation and you have interest in staying at a particular table, you can, but it gives you an opportunity to get up and go see another expert, and hopefully you'll get at least 3 or so opportunities to speak on 3 or 4 different, to talk with experts in 3 or 4 different areas. So get you some more coffee, something to drink, and then we'll settle in. We'll probably start it here in about 2 minutes. Now, I thought, do we have a slide back there for the to say where the tables are going to be? Okay, what we'll do is we'll introduce each table, and then we'll put a slide up showing you where the table is. I think we have signs up on the table of each expert. So first table will be the Communications Act update. If you want to know what Congress is doing and how they're doing it, our own Tim Donovan is going to head that panel, CCA's VP of Legislative Affairs. So Tim will be at the CommActUpdate. Table 2 is Cybersecurity. Mike Walls, I don't know where Mike is, but I say Mike is the Managing Director for Security Operations and Analysis at the EdgeWave. Phenomenal background in cybersecurity in our U.S. military. And some of the best experts in the world on fighting cybersecurity. Table 3, Steve Baker, VP Network Services Management and Numerex. Thank you, Steve, for filling in for us. And Adam Levine, COO of Vistrax. And then table 4 is small cells. If you want to talk about small cells, we have Paul Senior, co-founder of Airspan, and then Andy Germano from the Small Cells Forum. Thank you, Andy. And then Spectrum Economics. You may want to go to this one to find out a little about the post and pre and post and net impact of the auctions and the upcoming auction. Dr. Julia McHenry, Senior Associate at the Brattle Group. Tom Peters, Senior Advisor to Hogan Lovells, former FCC engineer. And Trey Hanbury will be at that table. Ask him any question you want on Spectrum. Table 6, Universal Service Fund, the expert on universal service, Matt Brill. Matt, where's Mr. Brill? There you are. Matt Brill from Latham Watkins, partner at Latham Watkins. Going beyond VOLTE, Ryan Somm, the Director of Business Development at Mavenir Systems. And then digital marketing, Lauren Zauzauer, Account Strategy Supervisor at VERT. And then table 9 is mobile care and wireless retail. You got Mark Vanderhayden. Where's Mark Vanderhayden? Okay, there's Mark right back there, President of MCE Systems, Inc. And the last table is FirstNet. If you want to know about FirstNet, what's going on, very good. Ed Parkinson back there, Director, Legislative Government Affairs at FirstNet. He can tell you where they're going, and they've got some really interesting new things happening in FirstNet. So why don't we get started? Everybody go around, pick your table, and we'll start the timer on the clock. You see the tables up here where everybody's located? Enjoy. We'll ring the bell in 30 minutes.